So tonight we're going to dedicate, one of the people around the table that's been around the table for so many years is our friend Catherine. And Catherine's mom ended up in ICU over our holiday. We've been gone 2 weeks. And I have to give a little bit of a disclaimer tonight. So I would appreciate it if everybody would just think, if you're chanting Daimoku, if you appreciate what we do here every week, to share the Gosho with you. There's a lot of actual effort that goes into that. If you have any sense of gratitude, please just chant Daimoku for Catherine's mom. And then also, my closest, oldest friend. We became district chiefs together. I've known him since I was 19 years old. So that's a long time. It's going on 50 years. And out of the clear blue sky, he's in very, very bad shape. And his life is in danger. He's waiting for a liver transplant. Oh. And he's only got about 3 weeks to find one. Okay, so I've been beside myself, crying, upset, really stressed out. If that affects how I behave tonight, or if I don't smile as much, I'm carrying around a big load of rocks on my shoulder right now. So if you could just remember Mr. Rene Betts in your prayers as well. He needs a liver. Okay, so going back to where we were 2 weeks ago, reading the object of devotion for observing the mind. We left on page 370. Yeah. Okay, but I want to inject something before we go back to reading the Gosho. Okay, because I want to make sure that everybody's clear about this. What is the Gohonzon really? What does the Gohonzon represent? The treasure tower, right? Mm. Okay. And in the Daishonin's teaching, who is the entity of the law?
Us.
You, my brother, all of us. All of us are the entity of the law, okay? That's why we are encouraged by Nichiren to accept his teaching that we are Buddhas in our present form. That we must come to that realization through practice and effort. Okay, so this is not just a theoretical understanding, but it's an actualized function of our life. And he says right here, on the treasure tower on page 299 and 300, the last little bit of the last sentence of 299, he says, you yourself are a thus come one who is originally enlightened and endowed with the three bodies. Okay, originally enlightened and endowed with the three bodies. That means you're already a Buddha, right? You should chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo with this conviction. So when you chant with the conviction that you're the Buddha as you are, you're not slandering, okay? You're actually following Nichiren's direct encouragement to you. He's saying this is the state of mind you should be in front of the object of devotion. That there is no separation between you and the object of devotion, that you're actually of the same source, okay? So in order to drive that home further is, once again, if you only read Goshos, you will always be reading something that was specifically written into an individual other than treatises, right? And then you have to understand who the individual was and where Nichiren was coming from in trying to encourage them. You even have to know a little bit of their history to understand what they were facing and to perceive the Daishonin's encouragement, okay? So the significance of the orally transmitted teachings is the fact that this is for people that are Nichiren's disciples, okay? That's why he left this for posterity. And I just wanted to go to from the Treasure Tower chapter of the OTT. This would be on page 91. The Emergence of the Treasure Tower starts on page 89. But right here on point 6, I'm going to read this. He says, point 6, on the passage long ago, an immeasurable 10,000 million Nayutas of worlds to the east in a land called Treasure Purity, there was a Buddha named Many Treasures. Now, we know Many Treasures is someone that appeared to do what? He appears in the Lotus Sutra, all right? And what does he appear to do?
Kosen Rufu.
Yeah, Kosa Rupa, but he actually comes to validate what Shakyamuni is saying, because Shakyamuni is saying a bunch of shit he's never said before. Okay? And he's actually saying things that are in opposition to things that he said before. And that's why this is the most difficult to believe and most difficult to understand teaching of the Buddha Shakyamuni. Okay? So really, Many Treasures' function is to validate. This is what all the Buddhas know. What Shakyamuni is laying on you now may sound different than anything he said, but that's because you weren't ready for it yet. And I'm here to say what he's telling you is the truth, right? And I love Many Treasures because you always seem to be laughing. Okay, but so point 6. There was a Buddha. I'll finish it. There was a Buddha named Many Treasures. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says. So this goes straight into Nichiren's teaching for you to understand this aspect. The treasure purity world is the wombs of our mothers. This goes back to what is the actual source of life. It's the womb of the mother. That is the treasure tower, right? He says there was a Buddha from this part that I just read. He says, there was a Buddha refers to the Buddha of the true aspect of all phenomena. Here, he is called Many Treasures Buddha, okay? But the Buddha of the true aspect of all phenomena isn't just limited to this Buddha. Do you understand? He says, the womb is the realm of earthly desires. So he's acknowledging how does life come forth? It comes forth from a process of sex, right? It comes from the physical union of a male and female of the species, right? Earthly desires. There's a desire that's innate in life that causes people to want to create procreative activity, right? The Buddha of the true aspect of reality resides. Listen to this. I love this. This is what demystifies everything. This is what says you don't have to be some pure saint person, okay? The womb is the realm of earthly desires. Okay, so what did he just say in the previous one? He says that the Buddha Many Treasures is the womb, represents the womb. And the womb is the realm of earthly desires. So do you understand where that's going? Common mortals. He says, the Buddha of the true aspect of reality resides in the midst of the mud and mire of earthly desires. Resides in the midst, never separates from. Do you understand? Resides. Okay? This refers to us living beings. Okay? So this isn't about becoming a saint. This is becoming someone that understands the truth. Right. Now, when Nichiren and his followers chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, they may be termed the Buddha of the lotus that is the entity of the law. Okay? And then I wanted to skip forward one more and read also from the OTT this point that is very important for you to understand if you're going to discuss the object of devotion for observing the mind. Demystify it. Don't look at it as something outside yourself. Here's what Nichiren says, point 3 from chapter 16. Okay, the lifespan of the thus come one Nam-myoho Renge-kyo thus come one. Point 3, regarding the words but good men, it has been immeasurable, boundless, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, millions of nayutas of kalpas since I in fact attained Buddhahood, which is pretty much what we just talked about, right? He says here, the record, he goes straight into it again, the record of the orally transmitted teaching says, I in fact is explaining that Shakyamuni in fact attained Buddhahood in the inconceivably remote past. The meaning of this chapter, however, is that I represents the living beings of the Dharma realm. I here refers to each and every being of the 10 worlds. In fact, establishes that I is a Buddha eternally endowed with the 3 bodies. This is what is being called a fact. That's why he's encouraging us in what I just read to accept this fact, right? That is what is being called a fact. Attained refers both to the one who attains and to the thing attained. Attain means to open or reveal your innate Buddhahood. It is to reveal that the beings of the Dharma realm are Buddhas, eternally endowed with the 3 bodies. Buddhahood means being enlightened to this. It means understanding it beyond the theoretical aspect. In the word sense, irai, the element I, already or having passed, refers to the past, and the element rai, coming, refers to the future. And the present is included in these two elements, Irai. The passage is thus saying that I, or the beings of the Dharma realm, in fact revealed the Buddhahood that is immeasurable and boundless in both past and future. It is referring to the 100 worlds and 1,000 factors and 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. The two words 100 and 1,000 in the sutra passage refer to the 100 worlds and 1,000 factors. These then represent the reality of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. Now Nichiren and his followers, which would be all of us, not just Nichiren, right? He's not in a hierarchical box by himself. He's always including the bodhisattvas of the earth that are his original disciples, right? As being equal to him. That's why when you chant the Gohonzon, it's not different than you. It's not separate from you. It's not something even like Nichiren Daishonin his life and you're chanting to it to try. No. You are the thus come one. All right? He says, now Nichiren and his followers who chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, now dig this, are the original lords of teaching of the lifespan chapter. And the reason I dug this up is because last week when I watched the video, about 40-minute mark, I go, Nichiren's the real Buddha of the lifespan chapter. And I thought, technically somebody's going to give me some crap, so I was ready to refute that. But he says specifically here in the orally transmitted teachings, right? What did I just say? Now Nichiren and his followers, those who chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, are the original lords of teachings of the lifespan chapter. Original. That precedes numberless major world system dust particle kalpas ago. That's the people of Kuang, right? We're going back to Kuang Ganja. That's what I keep saying. Generally speaking, the bodhisattvas of the theoretical teaching are not the sort of persons who are qualified to handle this chapter, for they employ an approach in which the theoretical teaching is on the surface, all the gobbledygook, but there's no practice. There's no relationship to the Gohonzon. There's no chanting of Daimoku. And the essential teaching is in the background, while Nichiren and his followers employ an approach in which the essential teaching, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, is in the forefront, and the theoretical teaching is in the background. It explains what we're doing in the actualization of our Buddha nature through our Daimoku to the object of devotion for observing the mind. This is what allows us to observe the mind and realize that we are the Buddha exactly as we are. Be that as it may, this chapter, the lifespan chapter, does not represent the teaching that is essential for the latter day of the law. The reason is that this chapter embodies the Buddhism of the harvest, suitable for the time when the Buddha was in the world, but only the 5 characters of the Daimoku constitute the Buddhism of sowing that is suitable for the present time. Thus, the Buddhism of the harvest is for the time when the Buddha was in the world, and the Buddhism of sowing is for the time after his passing. Hence, it is the Buddhism of sowing that is needed in the latter day of the law. And that's why we're reading this Gosho. Okay? To understand the object of devotion that is the key and essential element of the Buddhism of sowing. Where does Nam Myoho Renge Kyo come from? It's one of the 3 great secret laws, right? The invocation of Nam Myoho. Where does Nam Myoho Renge Kyo come from? According to the OTT. It's not a trick question, but you should be aware of it. Because Nam Myoho, and what he qualifies is that the Gohonzon is the embodiment of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay? But at the same time, it's qualified that of the 3 great secret laws, 2 of them actually come from the 1 great secret law. And what is the 1 great secret law? Is it Nam Myoho Renge Kyo? No. The 1 great secret law, as qualified by Nichikan, is the Gohonzon. Okay? Because the Gohonzon represents the original state, and everything else, even Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, is an outflow of that. Do you understand? So, let's go back now and start on page 370. And it's in the middle of the first column. We left off on On what authority do you say that the essential teaching is meant for the generations of the latter day of the law? The essential teaching. He's talking about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo because he just qualified. He's not talking about the essential teaching of the latter half 16th chapter, latter half of the 28th chapter Lotus Sutra. Okay? He's saying, answer from 370. The emerging from the earth chapter states, at that time the Bodhisattvas and Mahasattvas who had gathered from the lands of the other directions, greater in number than the sands of 8 Ganges rivers, stood up in the midst of the great assembly, pressed their palms together, bowed in obeisance, and said to the Buddha. Now everybody knows what he's talking about, right? We're at the ceremony now. All of these people have preceded, and they've been waiting, right? Okay. It says, world honored one, if you will permit us in the age after the Buddha has entered extinction, to diligently and earnestly protect, embrace, read, recite, copy, and offer also this sutra in the Sahe world, we will preach it widely throughout this land. At that time, the Buddha said to the Bodhisattvas and Mahasattvas, leave off, good men. There is no need for you to protect and embrace this sutra. This statement totally contradicts the Buddha's exhortations in the preceding 5 chapters from the teacher of the law to the peaceful practices chapter. In the latter part of the treasure tower chapter is the passage, in a loud voice, he, Shakyamuni, addressed all the 4 kinds of believers, saying, who is capable of broadly preaching the Lotus Sutra of the wonderful law in this Sahe world? Medicine King and the other great bodhisattvas, Brahma, Shakra, the gods of the sun and the moon, and the 4 heavenly kings would have followed Shakyamuni's command before anything else, even if no other Buddha had supported his exhortations. But many treasures Buddha and the Buddhas from throughout the 10 directions came to this world to exhort them to propagate the sutra after Shakyamuni's passing. Thus, hearing the Buddha's solemn appeal, the bodhisattvas all pledged, saying, we care nothing for our bodies or lives, for they desired solely to fulfill the Buddha's will. In the emerging from the earth chapter, however, the Buddha suddenly reversed himself and forbade all the bodhisattvas, more numerous than the sands of 8 Ganges rivers, from propagating the sutra in this world. We therefore face what appears to be an insoluble contradiction, one that is beyond ordinary understanding. And as he clarifies it, that's why at the end he's going to say, nothing like what I've just taught here has ever been spoken before. He goes on to qualify what that understanding is. The great teacher Tentai Chi Chig gave 3 reasons for Shakyamuni stopping the bodhisattvas and 3 more for his summoning the bodhisattvas of the earth. Essentially, the great bodhisattvas taught by the Buddha in his transient status and the great bodhisattvas who gathered from the other worlds, the ones that were there in the first part of the Lotus Sutra, were not qualified to inherit the lifespan chapter that reveals the eternal Buddha's inner truth. The eternal Buddha's inner truth. At the dawn of the latter day, evil people who slander the correct teaching would fill the land. So Shakyamuni Buddha rejected the pledge of those bodhisattvas and instead summoned the multitude, going on top of page 371, and instead summoned the multitude of great bodhisattvas from beneath the earth, the bodhisattvas of the earth. He entrusted them with the 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo, the heart of the lifespan chapter for the enlightenment of all beings in the land of Jambudvipa, the whole world. The bodhisattvas taught by the Buddha in his transient status were also unqualified because they had not been the disciples of Shakyamuni Buddha since the time he had first set his mind on enlightenment and attained enlightenment in the remote past, according to the literal text of the sutra. The great teacher Tentai states, the Buddha said of the bodhisattvas of the earth, these are my disciples destined to propagate my law. Okay, but Nichiren is just qualified to us that we are the original lords of teaching of the lifespan chapter. So understand, he's conveying this to people that are not around the campfire up in the Nobu. Do you understand what I'm saying? All right? Okay. So, he's saying, Myolo, the children, pardon me, the Buddha said the bodhisattvas of the bodhisattvas of the earth, these are my disciples destined to propagate my law. which it isn't his law. Do you understand? All right. Miolo says the children, it is if they're in the middle day, but not after the latter day. Okay, the disciples of Shakyamuni don't appear in the latter day of the law. The children propagate the law of the Father, and this benefits the world. Okay, so if we're bodhisattvas of the earth, propagating what? Are we propagating Shakyamuni's teachings of the Buddhism of the harvest? No, we're propagating the Buddhism of sowing, right? So who is the Father here? Really? Could it be Shakyamuni? No, it could not be. All right? The supplement to the words and phrases of the Lotus Sutra states, the law embodied herein in the Lotus Sutra is the law that was realized countless kalpas in the past. Countless kalpas in the past. And therefore it was entrusted to persons who had been the Buddha's disciples from countless kalpas in the past. In the Emerging from the Earth chapter, Bodhisattva Maitreya questioned Shakyamuni Buddha as follows. We ourselves have faith in the Buddha, believing that he preaches in accordance with what is appropriate, that the words spoken by the Buddha are never false, and that the Buddha's knowledge is in all cases penetrating and comprehensive. Nevertheless, in the period after the Buddha has entered extinction, if bodhisattvas who have just begun to aspire to enlightenment should hear these words, they will perhaps not believe in or accept them, but will be led to commit the crime of rejecting the law. Therefore, the world-honored one, we beg you to explain so that we may put aside our doubts, and so that in the future ages, when good men hear of this matter, they will not entertain doubts. Here, Bodhisattva Maitreya was imploring the Buddha to preach the lifespan chapter for those to come after his passing. Okay? So if he's preaching it for those who are going to come after his passing, because he start talking about Nichiren Daishonin in this? No. This is still the Buddhism, the harvest. Okay? The lifespan chapter states, some are completely out of their minds while others are not. Second column, page 371. Those children who have not lost their senses can see that this is good medicine, outstanding in both color and fragrance, so they take it immediately and are completely cured of their sickness. Okay? Like those of us that hear about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and begin practicing, right? The sutra explains that all bodhisattvas, persons of the two vehicles, and human and heavenly beings, received the seeds of Buddhahood, numberless major world system dust particle kalpas ago. The seeds were nurtured by the preaching of the 16th son of the Buddha, great universal wisdom excellence, as well as by Shakyamuni Buddha's 4 flavors of teachings in the theoretical teaching of the Lotus Sutra. Then they finally gained the way when they heard the essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra. The lifespan chapter continues. Those who are out of their minds are equally delighted to see their father return and beg him to cure them of their sickness. But when they are given the medicine, they refuse to take it. Why? Because the poison has penetrated deeply and their minds no longer function as before. So although the medicine is of excellent color and fragrance, they do not perceive it as good. The father thinks to himself, I must now resort to some expedient means to induce them to take the medicine. So he says to them, I will leave this good medicine here. You should take it and not worry that it will not cure you. Having given these instructions, he then goes off to another land where he sends a messenger home to announce that he's died. Okay? According to the distinctions and benefits chapter, the good medicine of the lifespan chapter is left for those in the evil age of the latter day of the law. So the good medicine that he's talking about here is actually for the bodhisattvas of the earth. Okay? All right. Going on to page 372, top of the page, new question. Who is the messenger mentioned in the passage? He sends a message home to announce. Right? Everybody's with me? Who is that messenger that Shakyamuni sent to go try to help the kids that still won't take the medicine become so freaked out that they take the medicine? Because that's what happens, right? When they hear their dad died, that's when, oh shit, I better take his medicine, then I won't worry about what I think, right? Okay. And they're all cured. And then dad says, I was just joking. It's what I had to do because you guys are dumbasses. No. Page 372. Answer. Question. Who is the messenger mentioned in the passage? He sends a messenger home to announce. Answer. It means the 4 ranks of sages. They fall into 4 categories. First, okay, there are 4 ranks of sages. So what's a rank? What's he mean by ranks? They're groups, like the leader and then, okay, the people following that leader, all right? Fall into rank, which means get behind your leader, right? Okay, so there are 4 ranks. He says, there are 4 ranks of sages, they fall into 4 categories. First, most of the 4 ranks of sages of Hinayana appeared in the first 500 years of the former day of the law. And second, most of the provisional Mahayana came in the second 500 years. Third, those of the theoretical teaching appeared mainly in the next 1,000 years, the middle day of the law, and the rest in the beginning of the latter day. Fourth, the 4 ranks of sages of the essential teaching are the bodhisattvas emerging from the earth, numerous as the dust particles of 1,000 worlds, who are certain to appear in the beginning of the latter day. When the sutra says he sends a messenger home to announce, it refers to the bodhisattvas of the earth, because they're the ones that come back with the message that allows people to be influenced to take the medicine that will cure them of the poison that's already seeped in too deeply for them to be able to perceive it as being good. Do you understand? It's us.
Yes.
Yeah.
This good medicine is the heart of the lifespan chapter, or Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, because we are all the same as Nichiren. We're not the first, but we are the same. We're equal. He says in every bit of the OTT, me and my followers, me and my followers, me and my followers. You're not to look at this as something diminished or less. You're to look at it as somebody aspiring to become a teacher, because you're capable of that. And it requires that you do that. I'll read it again. This good medicine is the heart of the lifespan chapter, or Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, which is endowed with name, entity, quality, function, and teaching. Since the Buddha would not entrust this good medicine even to the bodhisattvas of the theoretical teaching, how much less could he have done so to the bodhisattvas of the other worlds? The supernatural powers chapter states, at that time the bodhisattvas and mahasattvas who had emerged from the earth, numerous as the dust particles of 1,000 worlds, all in the presence of the Buddha, single-mindedly pressed their palms together, gazed up in reverence at the face of the world-honored one, and said to the Buddha, World-honored one, after the Buddha has entered extinction in the lands where the emanations of the world-honored ones are present, and in the place where the Buddhas have passed into extinction, we will preach this sutra far and wide. Tentai says, the great assembly witnessed the bodhisattvas of the earth alone making this pledge. Okay? So we are the ones that go cruise around and reinforce and create Kosarufu from the teaching left by our original teacher. Tao Hsien remarks, as far as transmission goes, this sutra was entrusted solely to the bodhisattvas who had welled up out of the earth. The reason for this is that the law embodied therein is the law that was realized countless kalpas in the past, and therefore it was entrusted to persons who had been the Buddha's disciples from countless kalpas in the past. Pardon me. Bodhisattva Manjushri is a disciple of the Buddha immovable, who dwells in the golden-colored world to the east. Bodhisattva perceiver of the world's sounds is a disciple of the Buddha infinite life in the west. Bodhisattva Medicine King is a disciple of the Buddha Sun Moon Pure Bright Virtue. Bodhisattva Universal Worthy is a disciple of the Buddha Jewel Dignity. They came to this Sahe world to help Shakyamuni Buddha teach the people of his day. Of his day. They were bodhisattvas of the provisional and theoretical teachings and were not entrusted with the supreme law, so they could not possibly appear and propagate it in the latter day, Nichiren says. In the Supernatural Powers chapter, the sutra states, at that time the world-honored one, before all these, he displayed his great supernatural powers. He extended his long, broad tongue toward upward until it reached the Brahma heaven. The other Buddhas, seated on lion seats beneath the numerous jeweled trees, did likewise, extending their long, broad tongues in no other sutra, whether Hinayana or Mahayana, exoteric or esoteric, is there a passage that describes Shakyamuni Buddha and all the other Buddhas seated together, extending their tongues to the Brahma heaven. The Amida Sutra states that the Buddhas covered a major world system with their broad, long tongues, but lacks the truth that such a gesture would substantiate. The Wisdom Sutra tells how the Buddha's tongue covered a major world system and radiated infinite light when he expounded the prajna wisdom. Yet this certainly cannot be proof comparable to that of the Supernatural Powers chapter. Because these two sutras include provisional teachings, they obscure the Buddha's enlightenment in the remote past. After the Buddha displayed his 10 supernatural powers, he entrusted the 5 characters of the mystic law to the bodhisattvas of the earth. As the sutra states, at that time the Buddha spoke to superior practices and the others in the great assembly of bodhisattvas, saying, "The supernatural powers of the Buddhas, as you have seen, are immeasurable, boundless, inconceivable. If in the process of entrusting this sutra to others, I were to employ these supernatural powers for immeasurable, boundless, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, millions of samyak kalpas, in order to describe the benefits of the sutra, I could never finish doing so. To put it briefly, all the doctrines possessed by the Thus Come One, all the freely exercised supernatural powers of the Thus Come One, the storehouse of the secret essentials of the Thus Come One, all the most profound matters of the Thus Come One, all these are proclaimed, revealed, and clearly expounded in this sutra." Tentai says the passage that follows the words, "At that time the Buddha spoke to superior practices," constitutes the 3rd stage of the chapter, the transfer of the essence of the Lotus Sutra. Dengyo states the Supernatural Powers chapter says, to put it briefly, all the doctrines possessed by the Thus Come One are proclaimed, revealed, and clearly expounded in this sutra. From this, it is clear that all the doctrines, all the freely exercised supernatural powers, the storehouse of the secret essentials, and all the most profound matters possessed by the Buddha as the fruit of his enlightenment, all these are proclaimed, revealed, and clearly expounded in the Lotus Sutra. So if you master what the true intent and the depth of the Lotus Sutra, is there anything else you're going to have to know? No, because everything that there is to know is in the Lotus Sutra. That is what's been proclaimed clearly by the Buddha Shakyamuni. And Many Treasures has said, yeah, that's right. Demonstrating 10 supernatural powers, the Buddha transferred the 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo to the 4 great bodhisattvas. Superior practices, firmly established practices, pure practices, and boundless practices. Myoho states that the first 5 of the 10 supernatural powers are meant for those living in Shakyamuni's lifetime, and that the last 5 are for the generations after his passing. But in a deeper sense, Nichiren's going to correct Myoho, but in a deeper sense, they are all intended for future generations, because that's when the truth will be revealed. The Buddha confirmed this later in the same chapter, quoting, "Because after the Buddha has passed into extinction, there will be those who can uphold this sutra. The Buddhas are all delighted and manifest immeasurable supernatural powers." The following entrustment chapter states, "At that time, Shakyamuni Buddha arose from his Dharma seat and, manifesting his great supernatural powers, with his right hand patted the heads of the immeasurable bodhisattvas and mahasattvas and spoke these words. Now I entrust it, the Lotus Sutra, to you." The Buddha first transferred the Lotus Sutra to the bodhisattvas of the earth, and then to the bodhisattvas taught by the Buddha in his transient status, the bodhisattvas of the other worlds, Brahma, Shakra, the 4 heavenly kings, and others. Then Shakyamuni Buddha caused the Buddhas who were emanations of his body and had come from the 10 directions to return, each one to his original land, saying, "The Tower of Many Treasures Buddha may also return to his former position." After the bodhisattvas of the earth had departed from the Medicine King chapter through the Nirvana Sutra, the Buddha transferred the sutra again to the people taught by him in his transient status and to the bodhisattvas from the other worlds. This was gleaning in order to entrust. Question. Did the bodhisattvas of the earth then appear in Jambudvipa during the 2 millennia of the former and middle days of the law to spread the Lotus Sutra? Answer. No, they did not. Question. Your answer comes as a surprise. If the Lotus Sutra, especially the essential teaching, is intended primarily for those people living after the Buddha's passing, and the Buddha entrusted the sutra to the bodhisattvas of the earth, why did they not appear during the former and middle days of the law to spread the sutra, as they said they would? Right? Because that qualification is not made there in that part that I just read, right? This for the original teacher to come and explain that part. And so, what's his answer? As he's questioning himself, I will not say. Okay? Whenever you see him do that, you know, okay, here's some heavy shit coming. Because he's going to go through the 3 times, you're going to ask me 3 times, I'm going to say no, and then I'm going to give you the truth that you can't understand. He says, answer, I will not say. Page 374, first column. Question, I am asking you again. What was the reason? Answer, I will not disclose it. Question, once more. What was the reason? Answer, if I disclose it, I will refuse to believe, and what is worse, will slander the sutra as in the latter day of the law of awesome Sound King Buddha. Even my own disciples would slander the sutra if I tried to explain, so I can only keep silent. Now, why would he say that? Why would he talk like that? Because he does it in lots of places. He's kind of shading. You got to understand, we got the advantage of 700 years later. We've got clarifications that have come from our own lives of daily practice, having been able to utilize this in a manner that nobody could in his day, because we get to read all the letters that everybody was being sent one at a time. There's no way, okay? But that's why the advent of the Soka Gakkai is so significant, all right? So why is he saying this? Because he's going to qualify himself. Okay, why is the record of the orally transmitted teaching secret? Why was it a secret text, not to be shown or spread or shared with people that were not true people of faith? True believers were the only ones that could see this. Why? Because what it says about Nichiren Daishonin will shock you unless you're already a disciple of Nichiren Daishonin. And him knowing that and not wanting to raise more crap for his disciples, or everywhere they go, oh, so you're like you're a Nichiren person, huh? You don't believe in the Buddha? No, you don't understand. It's not what I'm saying. Okay? So that's why he's saying, I can't really just say this, because unless you have faith, you're never going to understand what I'm saying in the first place. Right? But since you've asked 3 times,
Okay.
and because this is for a teaching that will last for the 10,000 years of Mappo and beyond, and because I know the guys that are going to come are coming, I'm going to go ahead and say the stuff now that you are not going to understand. So he says, if I disclose it, all will refuse to believe, and what is worse, will slander the sutra, as in the latter day of the law of awesome Sound King Buddha. Even my own disciples would slander the sutra if I tried to explain, so I could only keep silent. Question. Nonetheless, I urge you to answer. Unless you do, you will be guilty of the fault of greed and stinginess. Answer. Then, since I have no choice, I will try to give you a brief explanation. And it is brief, comparable to what it takes to truly understand it. He says, thus, since I have no choice, I will give you a brief explanation. The teacher of the law chapter states, since hatred and jealousy toward the sutra abound even when the thus come one is in the world, how much more will this be so after his passing? The lifespan chapter states, I will leave this good medicine here. The distinctions and benefits chapter speaks of the evil age of the latter day of the law. The medicine king chapter states, in the last 500-year period, you must spread it, the Lotus Sutra, abroad widely throughout Jambudvipa. A passage in the Nirvana Sutra reads, suppose that a couple has 7 children, one of whom falls ill. Though the parents love all of their children equally, they worry most about the sick child. With the clear mirror of these passages, one can guess the Buddha's intent. They show that the Buddha did not appear for the sake of those present during the 8 years when he revealed the Lotus Sutra at Eagle Peak, but for those who would come after him in the former, middle, and latter days of the law. His advent was specifically for people like us, those living in the beginning of the latter day, not for those who lived in the 2,000 years of the former and middle days. The sick child mentioned in the Nirvana Sutra represents those who slander the Lotus Sutra after the Buddha's passing. The Buddha will now leave this good medicine here, especially for those who, the sutra says, though the medicine is of excellent color and flavor, do not perceive it as good. It's especially for them. That's who it's really actually for. Because the ones that took it they'd never had a problem in the first place. They only assimilated so that they could be, I don't know how to explain it in simple terms. Yeah. The bodhisattvas of the earth did not appear in the former or middle day of the law for good reason, Nichiren says. Hinayana and provisional Mahayana were spread in the first millennium, the former day of the law, because the time was not right for the Lotus Sutra and the people were not ready to embrace it. The four ranks of bodhisattvas in the former day led those who had received the seeds of Buddhahood by hearing the Lotus Sutra during Shakyamuni's lifetime to harvest the fruit of Buddhahood through Hinayana and provisional Mahayana. If the bodhisattvas of the earth had spread the Lotus Sutra at that time instead of later, the people would have reviled it and thereby destroyed all the merit they had accumulated by maturing their seeds. Therefore, the bodhisattvas did not appear then. People of the former day are like those in the Buddha's lifetime who gradually matured and attained enlightenment through the first four flavors of teachings. In the middle and latter part of the middle day of the law, Bodhisattva Perceiver of the World Sound was reborn as Nanye, and Bodhisattva Medicine King as Tentai. Preaching the text of the theoretical teaching and employing the meaning of the essential teaching to supplement it, they fully revealed the doctrine of the 100 worlds and 1,000 factors and of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, which had not been revealed in the teaching of the Lotus Sutra in the 16th chapter of the lifespan. You got it? Right? Without Ichinen Sanzen, we don't get to where we are right now. Okay? And that doesn't, even though it's derived from the Lotus Sutra, it wasn't until Tentai qualified it as a teaching he'd been taught by Nanye, and then Chang'an wrote down what that teaching was. All right? They expounded it in principle, but they did not establish the actual practice of the 5 characters of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, or establish the object of devotion of the essential teaching. The time was not right for propagation, although even then some people had the proper capacity. Like Nanye, like Tentai. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. They could understand it, but they could never propagate it. There was nobody qualified to be able to receive it. Mm-hmm. Now, in the beginning of the latter day of the law, Hinayana adherents attacked the doctrines of Mahayana, and provisional Mahayana believers denounced the true Mahayana teachings. East is mistaken for west, and heaven and earth are turned upside down. The 4 ranks of bodhisattvas of the theoretical teaching are gone, and all the heavenly gods have deserted the country and no longer lend it protection. At this time, the bodhisattvas of the earth appear in the world for the first time, solely to bring the medicine of the 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo to the ignorant people of the latter day. Ignorant, not aware of yet. Not stupid. Ignorant doesn't mean stupid. It means you don't know. Mm-hmm. This is what is meant by the words, even if one reviles the correct teaching and falls into the evil paths, one can create causes for the eventual attainment of benefit. You, Nichiren's writing this, you who are my disciples, take this to heart. So please listen carefully. The countless bodhisattvas of the earth were the disciples of the Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of teachings, from the time he first set his mind on and attained enlightenment in the remote past. But they did not come to his place of enlightenment in India, nor did they come to the grove of sal trees when he entered nirvana. They were unfaithful to him. They also failed to appear when the Buddha preached the first 14 chapters or the theoretical teaching of the Lotus Sutra. And they left the assembly when he preached the last 6 chapters of the essential teaching, right? They skipped at an entrustment, right? They only attended the Buddha during the first 8 chapters of the essential teaching. You understand? The latter 14 chapters, the first 8 of those. They were split for the last 6, right? Since these noble bodhisattvas received the 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo and made a solemn oath to Shakyamuni Buddha, many treasures in the Buddhas of the 10 directions, is it possible that they will not appear now at the beginning of the latter day of the law? Know this, in the time for the practice of Shakabuku, the 4 bodhisattvas appear as worthy rulers who rebuke and convert ignorant rulers, and in the time for the practice of Shoju, they appear as priests to embrace and spread the correct teaching. Question: does the Buddha predict their coming in the latter day of the law? Answer: the Buddha states in the last 500-year period, and I'm on the second column of page 375, the last paragraph. Question: does the Buddha predict their coming in the latter day of the law? Answer: the Buddha states, in the last 500-year period, the Lotus Sutra will spread abroad widely throughout Jampadvipa. The great teacher Tentai predicts, in the last 500-year period, the mystic way will spread and benefit humankind far into the future. Myolo predicts, the beginning of the latter day of the law will not be without inconspicuous benefit. The great teacher Dengyo says, the former and middle days are almost over and the latter day is near at hand. The latter part of this quotation means that his was not the right time for propagation. The great teacher Dengyo, who was living in Japan, foresaw the beginning of the latter day of the law, saying, speaking of the age, the propagation of the true teaching will begin in the age when the middle day of the law ends and the latter day opens. My favorite part, regarding the land, it will begin in the land, not the next part is my favorite part. Regarding the land, it will begin in the land to the east of Tang and to the west of Katsu. As for the people, it will spread among people stained by the 5 impurities who live in a time of conflict. The sutra says hatred and jealousy toward this sutra abound even when the thus come one is in the world. How much more will this be so after his passing? There is good reason for this statement. At a time of conflict, and the commentary refers to the 2 disasters of internal strife and invasion from the Western Sea that are occurring at present. At this time, the countless bodhisattvas of the earth will appear and establish in this country the object of devotion foremost in Jampadvipa, that depicts Shakyamuni Buddha of the essential teaching attending the eternal Buddha. Right? Like on the Gohonzon. Attending the eternal Buddha. This object of devotion has never appeared in China, in India or China. Its time had not come when Prince Jogu in Japan constructed Shite no Ji temple, so he could only make a statue of Amida, a Buddha of another world, the object of devotion. When Emperor Shomu erected Todai-ji temple, he enshrined a statue of the Buddha of the Flower Garland Sutra, Vairashana Buddha, as the object of devotion, but could not manifest the true meaning of the Lotus Sutra. The great teacher Dengyo almost revealed the truth of the sutra, but the time had not yet come. The time had not yet come, however, and so he built a statue of the Buddha of the eastern region, but did not represent the 4 bodhisattvas of the essential teaching in any form. Ultimately, this was because the revelation of the true object of devotion had been entrusted only to the bodhisattvas of the earth. They had been waiting for the right time to emerge from beneath the earth and carry out the Buddha's decree. They did not appear in the former middle or middle day. Okay? So, Tentai, even though he had the capacity, was not a bodhisattva of the earth. But if they do not appear in the latter day of the law, their vows would be outright lies. And the prophecies of Shakyamuni, many treasures, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions would be no more than froth on the waters. Actual Ichinen says is all that matters. We have recently experienced great earthquakes, huge comets, and other calamities such as never occurred in the former middle day. These signs could not be caused by Garuda birds, Asura demons, or dragon deities. They must foretell the appearance of the 4 great bodhisattvas. Tentai states, by observing the fury of the rain, we can tell the greatness of the dragon that caused it. And by observing the flourishing of the lotus flowers, we can tell the depth of the pond they grow in. Miela states, wise men can perceive the cause of things, as snakes know the way of snakes. When the skies are clear, the ground is illuminated. Similarly, when one knows the Lotus Sutra, one understands the meaning of all worldly affairs. Showing profound compassion for those unable to comprehend the gem of the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. The simultaneity of the reality of the fact that you're the Buddha even though you live in the 9 worlds. The Buddha wrapped it within the 5 characters of Myoho Rengekyo, with which he then adorned the necks of the ignorant people of the latter age. The 4 great bodhisattvas will protect anyone who embraces the 5 characters as faithfully as Tai Kun Wang and Duke of Chao supported King Wen, and as devotedly as the 4 white-haired elders served Emperor Hui. Written by Nietzsche on the 5th day of the 4th month of the 10th year of Brunei, with the cyclical sign Mizunoto Tori. And I think I read the cover letter before this is again to Toki Jonin. I have received an online robe, 3 sumi sticks, and 5 writing brushes. I have written down some of my thoughts concerning the doctrine of observing the mind. I am sending the treatise to Ota Kyoshinbo and the others. It explains an important matter that concerns me, Nichiren, all right, and must be kept secret. Do you understand? He's saying, don't tell people what I just said here, because it does qualify that I'm pretty sure I'm something special, and that you are too, since you know me and you've embraced my teaching. That's what he's actually saying. Only those of single-minded faith should be allowed to read it. The treatise contains many difficult points and few answers. What it reveals, however, has never been heard of before, and is bound to startle those who read or hear of it. If you do show it to others, never allow 3 or 4 persons to read it together at one time, so they can't confuse one another. I did read this at the beginning. At the more than 2,220 years since the Buddha's passing, the heart of this treatise has never been revealed before. Despite the official persecution facing me, I expound it now in the 5th 500-year period. When the time is right for its propagation, I hope those who read it will remain firm in their faith, so that both teacher and disciples can together reach the pure land of Eagle Peak and behold with reverence the faces of Shakyamuni Buddha, many treasures in the Buddha of the 10 directions. There he's just saying, attain Buddhahood in their present form. Okay? So once again, this is going to Toki Jonin. Is Toki Jonin Sairenbo? No. That's why the clarifications of what he's really saying is here. Do you understand? Toki Jonin wasn't sitting up in the Nobu. Understand? All right, and I qualified what he's really saying here. He already qualifies here. No, it's me and my disciples. And no, it's me and my disciples. Okay?
Okay.
With that, I again ask you all before you shut it off. My friend Renee Betts needs a liver. Please chant Daimoku for my friend Renee Betts.
Okay.
And please, if you can think about it, Catherine's mom is getting better. We have all been chanting for her. She's showing some recovery, and we hope that that continues and sustains itself. Catherine, we missed you tonight. We love you, and we're here for you. So let's all just stick together and keep growing. All right, new year.
Yeah.
All right, see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.